as the residents are, that they now don't have any services provided at all. It's being handled by the federal department now, but that transition from the council-run provision of care to the private providers has not gone well. Anthony Marsh is the Mayor of Mornington Peninsula Shire Council. Good to talk to you again, Anthony. Good morning.
Good morning, Virginia.
It's been months now since you stopped doing it, and the new private care is supposed to be in the homes of your residents. What do you think of this?
That's right. So we had a transition date of the 1st of July, and obviously the expectation from us was that transition would be quite smooth, and unfortunately that hasn't been the case.
And have you managed to find out why?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, one that's an ongoing issue, regardless of the funding model, was basically a staffing shortage across the country. So as you've spoken about earlier this morning, we've got some 36,000 additional workers needed in this industry across the country. So that's an inevitable reality of the industry, regardless of the funding model. But for us, we didn't expect that these private providers would have some of the issues that they're experiencing. We were told the transition would be quite seamless, and unfortunately it's not the case.
How do you feel about the fact that the transition has not been seamless?
Incredibly frustrated. I mean, we agonised over this decision. For us, it wasn't an option. We had to transition anyway. There was no way we could compete under the new funding model in this market, but we took it as a decision on timing. And by going this year instead of next year, originally the time frame was obviously everyone would have to pull out under the existing funding model by 1st of July next year. That's been extended by a year, which in hindsight, is frustrating. But for us, we thought by transitioning early would actually help alleviate some of these issues by giving people access to the market early, and therefore there would be a less rush on the market, less competition. So it hasn't quite worked out that way in reality, and I guess the undertaking that we're given from the providers that this would pan out nicely hasn't quite come to fruition. So it's incredibly frustrating, and we're completely empathetic to those people that have been left with some of the non-essential services not being delivered.
Indeed, they're not getting the services, and you must be getting some of the flack, I guess. They'll be calling you saying, well, you're not providing to us anymore. You said it to go private, it'll work fine, and it's not.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a misunderstanding that this is outsourcing, and as I'm sure most people in the industry are well aware, this is absolutely a federal government responsibility and always has been. So we're effectively giving it back under a new funding model. But in reality, people don't care who's delivering the service, whether it's federal, state, or local government. They just want the service. So we completely understand the frustration, but it is a position where we're now and where we can't get back into the market. Their hands are tied. So we're working with the providers and the federal government. Unfortunately, the providers don't work for us. We're not the clients, so there's limited options in terms of advocating to them, but we have tried. But we speak to the federal government on a daily basis, and we're just trying to get this moving as best we can, but it's problematic.
So when do you think your residents, for example, many of whom who have not had any service since July, uncleaned homes, not people going into their home and the like, when are they going to get it?
It's a tough question, Virginia, and it's unfortunately...
You still don't have a date? You don't have a date from...
No, we don't have a date. So we're being told they're doing everything they can to get the workforce established. As I said, we expected that to be in place by the 1st of July. Obviously, it hasn't occurred, but we're reaching out every day trying to understand what that time frame is, but we haven't been given a firm date yet. We've just been giving the assurance that they're doing everything they can.
Goodness me. Anthony Marsh, what was it about the new funding model that made it impossible or not competitive for you to tender?
So in the past, or the previous funding model, we basically got block funding up front, so contracting, we could basically build a workforce and have some certainty there. It was also not in a competitive open market sort of process. So under this new funding model where there's effectively spot funding, clients choose where to spend their money, we just can't compete. When it's opened up to a competitive process like that, and you've got businesses that do this as their core business, it's not a core business, it's obviously something that we take very seriously, but it's not a core business for council. And in a huge area like the Mornington Peninsula, we just can't compete in that model.
Do you wish that those private providers, and some of them include Care and others and Bolton Clark, do you wish they hadn't have put their hand up and said, yep, we can do it, if they knew they just didn't have the staff to provide it?
Oh, absolutely. I think if everyone had been a bit more honest, whether that was something that they had a lot of foresight to, I'm not sure. I can't speak on their behalf, but obviously if there was an understanding that there was no way they could deliver these services by the transition date, our expectation would have been that the transition was deferred.
So you would have deferred the transition and the council would have kept providing the care?
Yeah, had we had that conversation, I think there absolutely would have been a discussion internal to council where we would have deferred that, but we were never given that option. We were always told that the transition would be seamless, and now that the decision is unfortunately done and dusted. There's not much we can do at this point, but absolutely, I'm sure the council would have deferred that transition had we been given some, I guess, insights into the problems that could have occurred.
And Anthony Marsh, is it your understanding that the council workers that you had employed to provide this care that were stood down, that they haven't been re-employed by these private providers? They're still unemployed or not doing this work?
It's a tricky one. So I think we had quite an ageing workforce ourselves, and there was quite a lot of people that had a lot of uncertainty. That were aware of some of these transitions, obviously being on the cards some time ago. And then those that were going to continue in the workforce, there was an expectation that many of those would be swept up by the private providers. So I don't know on an individual basis how many of those have occurred. That's not something we're privy to, but that was an expectation that a lot of these would transition into the private market and to continue to deliver the same services, but under obviously the private businesses.
Anthony, we'll stay in touch with you because it's not solved, and on a day-by-day basis, you've got constituents who are not getting care, which is pretty outrageous. But thanks for speaking to us today.
Thanks so much, Virginia.
Anthony.